All right, guys, I got a good one for you today. I'm going to be breaking down 5 personal finance moves that I got right early on. Making these moves helped me to set myself up for success. It was a big part of the reason I was able to become a multimillionaire before reaching the age of 30. If you can make just some of these moves, you might be able to put yourself in a much better financial position. I'll also be breaking down a bonus move I made towards the end of this video, so you're going to want to stick around for that. Without further ado, let's dive in. All right, there's no secret. I built an emergency fund. When I was in my early 20s, I made sure that I built an emergency fund. An emergency fund is just a fund of money that is specifically designed to help you cope with an emergency if you're suddenly faced with one. The reason why these funds are so important is because if you don't have one, then you could be forced to rack up a bunch of credit card debt to help you get through an emergency, such as losing your job, totaling your car, or going through a COVID situation. If you get in deep credit card debt during an emergency, this can really slow down your financial progress. But if you already have an emergency fund, then it acts like an insurance policy against financial catastrophe if something very bad were to happen in your life. Unfortunately, a lot of people who are just coming out of high school or college don't realize how important it can be to have an emergency fund until it's too late. I recommend that you make one of your first financial priorities when you're in your early 20s to build an emergency fund. You should have enough money to cover 3 to 6 months of living expenses. You can put this fund into a high yield savings account just like I did. Do not let an emergency bankrupt you when you're young. Be prepared ahead of time. Now, let's move on to number 2. I used credit cards correctly when I was young. Just as important it is to prevent going into deep amounts of credit card debt, it's also important to know how to use credit cards correctly. You see, there are tons of advantages to using credit cards correctly. For example, credit cards often have rewards like miles or cash back on certain purchases, and they tend to have better fraud protection compared to debit cards. They help you build your credit history, which can lead to a higher credit score and a lot of additional benefits. When a lot of people are just beginning their careers, they're either too afraid to use credit cards or they just use them the wrong way. The best way to use credit cards is to use less than 20% of your available credit and to pay the entire balance off monthly. This is what I did. It helped to boost my credit score, and it also helped qualify me for larger credit limits and lower interest rates down the line, which turned out to be incredibly helpful now that I'm a real estate investor. Whether you need a loan for a house, a vehicle, a business, or anything else, the lower the interest rate is, the better. So having a higher credit score will give you access to lower rates. So don't be afraid to use your credit card. If you're just starting out in your career, please just make sure you use it the right way. Pay off your balances every month, and at the very least, do not use more than 20 to 30% of your available credit and never miss any payments. Okay, let's move on. I learned how to invest. Here's what they don't teach you in school about personal finance. If you leave your money in a checking account or a low yield savings account, it is gradually going to be eaten away by inflation. The way this works is that there is a certain amount of dollars in existence, but then every year the government prints more and more and puts more dollars into circulation. When this happens, the value of all those dollars, including the ones in your bank account, go down. So if you have $1,000 in your bank account this year, then next year you might only be able to buy the equivalent of $970 worth of goods and services. Even if you still have $1,000 in your bank account, this is because price increases due to inflation. You might have noticed that every single year, prices for clothing tend to go up and up. That is inflation at work. To understand how serious this is, the average home price in the year of 1900 in America was roughly $5,000. Now in 2025, it's $417,000. So in 2025, you have to spend $412,000 more to get the same thing that you could have gotten in 1900 for $5,000 a house. What this means for you is that keeping a large portion of your net worth in cash in the bank is not a great long-term strategy. Instead, you need to learn to invest in assets that outpace, or at the very least, keep up with inflation. This is what I did. I took the time to study investing. I read books, I watched podcasts, I spoke with people who were very wealthy, and eventually I started investing in several different assets that provided me with cash flow that were extremely beneficial. For starters, I invested in broad S&P 500 index funds. These index funds track the top largest 500 publicly traded companies by market cap. These investments tend to generate around 8 to 10% per year, and they're extremely low risk. This was a very good place for me to start because I was new to investing. If you're still in your teens or 20s, and if you don't know anything about investing yet, then you should really start learning about it. The goal is to have your money making as much money as possible for you, so you don't have to only rely on your labor to generate money, right? So in that case, learning about the S&P 500, learning about the differences between stocks, bonds, and commodities, learning about some of the best performing index funds in America like QQQ, VU, VTI, and SPY, when it comes to investing, knowledge is power. As Warren Buffett said, arguably the best investor of all time, the more you learn, the more you earn. Never forget that. Now, here's one that I'll say is probably unpopular. I lived way beneath my means. This one sounds very simple, but it's actually a lot more difficult than the other ones. The reason is because a lot of people get out of high school or college and they get their first job. Then once they're earning some decent money, they get reckless. They start buying cars they can't afford, buying watches they can't afford, moving into apartments they can't afford, going on vacations they can't afford. Before they know it, they find themselves stacking up bad debt and quickly getting in over their heads. When I was in my early 20s, I could see a lot of other people falling into this trap. I didn't want to be one of them. I saw my friends taking off to Croatia and Europe, and I'm like, dude, where are you guys finding the money to go on these trips? So I actually briefly moved back home with my parents. Doing this allowed me to save a bunch of money on rent. The money that I saved, I was able to funnel into many more investments, and I started my own business. I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew that if I could put myself in a situation where I could better handle my finances or financial risk, then I was going to have a better shot at turning my dreams into a reality. So that's what I did, and it worked. I maintained financial discipline by living at home with my parents. Is it the most fun thing to go back to your childhood bedroom where you were in your 20s? No, absolutely not. But at the stage of life that I was in, saving an extra $10,000 to $30,000 per year can literally make the difference between being able to chase your dreams or not chasing them at all. Think about that for a second. You don't necessarily have to move back in with your parents after graduation, and this isn't an option for everybody, but just try to keep your expenses very low during this time. Don't buy the brand new flashy car, buy the reliable used one, and live with roommates. Every dollar you can save is another dollar you can spend pursuing the career you want or make investments that can pay you for many years to come. All right, let's move on to number 5. I tracked my finances extremely carefully. There's a lot of people out there who will go 5, 10, 20 days or even more without ever looking at their bank accounts or credit card balances. Many of these people lose track of the amount of money they have coming in or going out, and as a result, they often spend significantly more money than they have coming in. I took the opposite approach. I put a huge amount of attention on my finances, like an insane amount of attention. Every single day, I would open up my bank accounts and check my credit card balances every single day. It's funny, but when you become hyper aware of what's happening with your finances, you avoid ever getting into a situation where you become neglectful of them. Now, it might sting a little bit to become extremely aware of what's happening with your financial accounts, but trust me, being in denial about them is not going to help at all. The first steps towards getting rich is becoming extremely aware of what's happening with your current financial situation. Then you can make a plan to get in a better one and stick to it. Make adjustments as needed. Now, as promised, I wanted to throw one bonus in there as well. Here's another thing that I got right in my early 20s when it comes to personal finances and money. I invested in tax-advantaged assets and accounts. What I'm talking about here is things like real estate, 401ks, and IRAs. All three of these things have incredible tax benefits. For example, with real estate, you get a depreciation deduction worth the entire building value on your investments spread out over time. With traditional 401ks and IRAs, your contributions can reduce your taxable income for the year, and your accounts can grow tax deferred. When you invest in tax-advantaged assets and accounts, you can grow your net worth while slashing your tax bill, and that's what we are all about here on my channel. If you want to learn more about real estate investing, watch this video I made about how you can get started as a beginner. If you want to learn about tax-advantaged retirement accounts, check out this video right here. Now, before we wrap up this video, I want to give a quick reminder that the Tax-Free Wealth Challenge is just around the corner. This exclusive event is designed for high-income earners where I'll be sharing powerful tax strategies that can help you cut your tax bill by 50 to 100%. So if you're a business owner earning $500,000 or more annually, or if you're a W-2 earner making at least $400,000 per year, this challenge is made for you. I'll be walking you through the exact strategies used by some of the wealthiest families in the country to legally reduce their taxes. So if you're interested, click the link in the description below to reserve your spot. And that's it for today's video. As always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. You know what it is. And I look forward to catching you on the next video. Cheers.